So from the fire element, the next element that comes, right? Actually, I forgot to mention. So all these elements are looping in what is called the creative cycle. And the creative cycle, for those of you who have just joined in, if you've missed the beginning, it is rooted in traditional Chinese medicine in what is called the birth cycle or the sheng cycle, where one element gives birth to the other. Just like winter gives rise to spring, spring gives rise to summer, so on and so forth. And if we think of this water, when you water a seed, a sapling starts to grow, it becomes a tree. And then when we chop wood, we can use wood to then become fuel for fire to burn and to grow and expand, which is what we're doing in the world. And I forgot to mention the fire element is associated with. So in the wood element springtime, I invited you to connect with your vision, to play, to experiment, to see the possibilities of what might be without the stress and the pressure of necessarily having to succeed, to win, for it to be perfect. Because it is a cycle, right? It is never perfect. It is not going to be perfect. And that's okay because we keep growing and we keep looping and it is never ending. It just keeps going. So let's come to the fire element. The fire element is the moment when you have this clear vision, when you have perhaps even a plan in place for how you might begin to take action. Then you reach the fire element, and that is when you start to take action. If water element is being, fire element is doing. It is allowing. It is completely without hesitation showing up in the world fully in your relationships, in your work, in your lives. Those of you who do Insight Timer lives, for example, being unabashed about the message you have to share, being unabashed about the program you have to offer, because it is not about you, it is about this message. It is about what you want to convey and share with the world. What happens during the fire element is when you experience anxiety and when we slip into this imposter syndrome, it is very often because we return to our small selves and we are afraid, oh no, what if I fail? Or we start to fall into this trap of social comparison. Oh, that person is doing something much greater than me. And then we start to compare all these things that are not about the heart of the message, not about the actual thing you want to share with the world, because it is not about you. Remember, I shared that the ideas come from something, a source greater than yourself. And I truly believe this, that we are all vessels to convey a message, to share something with the world, with the people with love, to bring greater good in this world. If we see every single action, behavior, and relationship that we have with others as a reflection of this, then don't feel you will be less likely to feel small because you're in service of something greater, and that's okay. Let's see, Elise mentioned in the chat, yes, fear of failure for sure. I wanted to also shout out. So just now we talked, each of these five elements in the creative cycle is associated with emotions when in balance and when out of balance. Emotions are an experience of energy reflecting in certain ways. So the water element, when out of balance, is fear. It's inaction. You're frozen and you're not able to move forward. It's you're feeling stuck in a relationship, or you're afraid that your program won't succeed, or you'll never make it as an entrepreneur, or you will never be able to find the person you love, or even you'll never be able to have a normal cycle, right? That is connected with the water element. When in balance, however, it is unshakable trust. It is deep intuition and insight and a surrender, knowing that it is not just you. There is a greater holding. The earth is holding you. Just like today, I'm able to come out here and be fully, completely authentic and sharing my message because I truly believe that there is a greater holding than me. Today's live is not about me. It is about this creative cycle that I feel and I see and I understand, and I know that I have to share this message. And I know that Inside Timer has got my back. It's holding me and holding all of us. And I know that, for example, the circumstances around me are supporting me. So it comes from this place of trust. And of course, the trust comes from safety. So if you happen to be tuning in and you're in that place where you feel unsafe, Then, before even doing anything, what I want to invite you to do is to create safety for yourself. You might do that by massaging the acupressure point. You might do that by resourcing and making sure that you have relationships, you have resources that support you to feel capable, feel held, feel that you have a right to be, a right to exist. Only from there, then can you depart outwards into the world. So we have this security. If we move towards the wood element, just now I mentioned a little bit about this, the follicular phase. This is associated with when out of balance, anger, impatience, frustration, stress from having to be perfect and to succeed, to win, to launch and to be, the full version of what could be. When in balance, it is associated with play, creativity, innocence, a sense of possibility. Without, we widen into more possibilities. It doesn't have to be any single one yet. All of them could potentially happen. And for those of you who are tuning in, like if you are a physics fan, that's like the Schrodinger's cat. So in the box, before we open the lid, the cat is both dead and alive at the same time. So we didn't do the action yet. Everything is possible. Then we reach the fire element. That's when we start to open the box, right? We start to decide, okay, this, of all the possibilities, this is the one I'm going to take action on, and I do it fully. Like today, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do the Insight Timer live. And I show up here and I connect with you, with myself, with Insight Timer. So that's the action taking. And when in balance, the fire element shows up in the form of self confidence, self love, connecting with your true power and authenticity. When in out of balance, that shows up in the form of anxiety, insecurity, playing small, the sense of not knowing how to show up fully and how to connect with that power, and a sense of insecurity, perhaps from social comparison. So all of these elements are connected with specific ways that we show up. So even if you've never heard of them, if you observe your own behaviors or the emotions that you experience, you might be able to identify some imbalances that are related to these specific phases in the creative cycle as well as your menstrual cycle. So let's move on to the next element. And the next element, so after fire, I mentioned water gives rise to wood, which grows. Wood is chopped, and then we use it to make to grow to start a fire. After fire burns, what it remains on the surface of the ground is some ash and the soil. So this is the earth element. And of all elements, because there are 4 seasons that we experience in a year, 4 times of the day, 4 main phases of the moon cycle, but there are 5 elements. And this earth element is the fifth element. Even though it is the fifth element, I would say it's actually one of the most important elements of all because it holds everything together. The earth element is that sense of grounding, that rootedness, that unshakable sense of stability, and that connection between each of the cycles. So my teachers from the Red School, they call their work has the menstrual cycle as 4 seasons, and they have what is called the crossover days, which is when you transition from one season, maybe your period, into the next season, and there's 1 or maybe even 2 days where you cross over from inward facing to outward facing, from outward facing to action taking, that full doing. And then from that action taking, you transition back into a reflective state, which we've not reached yet. So that closure and then back into the menstrual cycle. So the earth element is present at all of these transitions because it brings you back to center so that whatever happens around you, you stay rooted to your being. In traditional Chinese medicine, the earth element is also often, if you read texts about traditional Chinese medicine, many different texts will also say this is associated with late summer, the energy of harvest, contentment, gratitude, ripening. This is within the time of the day. I like to see it as a time of the golden hour. If you are tuning in and maybe you're a photographer, you might have heard of it. When the whole of the world is basked in this beautiful golden light, that is not direct, it's not too harsh, it's not quite like the energy of summer, which is heat and just pure action taking and full bloom. It is this soft, ripe energy. And it is when everything is ripe for picking. It's not very long, so we don't have much time to for example, to celebrate something, right? A celebration is usually just a few moments or maybe even a day. We don't celebrate our birthdays for very long. We don't harvest fruits for very long, even though now we've mechanically actually made that possible through hastening the cycles, which is actually not normal. But so this is the energy of this time, and I like to see it as the time that is in the luteal phase. So after ovulation, that is when typically in the menstrual cycle, most menstruating individuals are the most fertile. And this is a great time, I forgot to mention, to be active, to be social. If you feel that energy, you want to connect with the world. If you do physical training, this is a good time to build muscle, to eat more proteins that will help you build that healthy muscle. You can do very active and more intense and vigorous things during around ovulation and slightly after ovulation as well. So in the early part of the luteal phase, which is when your estrogen levels start to slowly dip and your progesterone levels, they continue to rise and then later they plateau. This is what I like to call the earth element season as well, in addition to the transitions. This is because this is a time when many still report feeling this great energy of being outwards in the world. And at the same time, there's a sense of contentment, um, there's a sense of grounding and rootedness. And this is a good time, or actually at any time, the earth element is always welcome, is to begin to acknowledge what you've done in the world and to celebrate. So if you have gone through the phase of you have an idea, you connect with this idea, then you see the full possibilities of what this idea could be as something real in the world. You create a plan for this idea and you pick a possible plan. Then you execute the plan. And then from this plan, you have something tangible, maybe a live on Insight Timer, maybe a product that is real that you hold with your hands. Well, this is real. All right. That is after the doing, after the fire element. This is the earth element. Like, wow, look at this wonderful thing I have. This first prototype, this first experience, our first circle together talking about the menstrual cycle and the creative cycle. And it is so important, without jumping into the next phase yet, to just take a moment to acknowledge the fruits that are ripe and to harvest them with this sense of gladness and gratitude. Harvesting them without yet judging and sorting which fruits to keep and which fruits to then discard and release and let go and remove from the next cycle. And very often we skip this completely. And that throws us off balance because we're just so focused on jumping into the next cycle already assessing, oh, was I successful? Which parts should I remove, or which things were great about this thing? What did I not succeed in? What did I fail at? Just take a moment to celebrate and acknowledge. And it is so important to do that as well as in your relationships. The earth element archetype is associated with the mother. And also in the women's life cycle, probably we won't have the time to talk about it today. The entire cycle can also be mapped onto your cycle as a person. So the earth element is the mother, the archetype of a mother. You are basically, you've at this point realized you've mothered something, you've given life to something else. This came out of you, and you are the vessel for that to happen. How amazing is that? So you connect with the qualities of this nurturing, nourishing sense of self, and you receive all there is to receive, because this is a moment where transformation has happened. From an idea, this became a reality. For those of you who are tuning in who are mothers, you had an idea, you thought, okay, maybe I would bring life into this world, and then you became a mother. Life came through you. If you've never been a mother, same for your projects, same for your relationships. Maybe you thought, oh, this is a wonderful person. How great it would be if we could embark on a friendship, a romantic relationship together. And then you saw the possibilities of what could be, and then you took actions to start to allow that to happen. And then transformation unfolded. So the power of the earth element is transformation. And we connect with this transformation by celebrating and by assimilating all the different elements, by returning to center, remembering where we came from, and not forgetting that. When out of balance, the earth element shows up in the form of rumination, of overthinking, of over worrying, and sometimes in the form of people pleasing as well. Because the earth element is the mother. If you are tuning in and if you tend to be a giver, this message is for you. Don't give too much of yourself. Remember, the most important person in your life is yourself, not anyone else. And I just had a conversation with my husband a few months back on this topic. I said, who is the most important person in your life? And of course his answer was not himself. So if you're tuning in and your answer was not yourself, I encourage you to change that so that your answer is yourself. Put yourself at the center. The mother, yes, you give life to other things, to other beings, but you have to be the mother. To be the mother needs an incredible amount of holding, an incredible amount of being well resourced, being well nourished, being sufficiently inspired, being sufficiently creative, being sufficiently energetic, all of these things. So that's so important.